the great, the one and only Australian legend, Mark Bozza. Welcome to the Run Home with Joel and Michelle.
Good afternoon, Joel. Good afternoon, Michelle. How are you all?
Boz, we're good. We're good.
Did you catch any of my diatribe, Boz?
I did. I'll talk to you. I think there's a lot more simpler things that you can do.
I'm still trying to follow the ball.
No, I understand where you're coming from. Because teams need to evolve to keep people interested. But I just think there's a lot more that you can do. Number one, by actually starting at the start of the season, we're playing for two major trophies. Obviously, the grand final is the main one.
Yep.
But the minor premiership is one as well. Okay? And with the money that's swilling around the game, or so we get told, that's swilling around the game, there should be prize money for where you finish in the league. Quite simple. So I always remember when the Premier League first started, and I remember our late chairman, Sir Deadly Doug Ellis, his nickname was Deadly because of the amount of managers he used to sack. So there was one year that we were guaranteed a fourth at Aston Villa. We already won the League Cup at Wembley. We got knocked out in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. And there was a slight chance that we could drop to fifth, but there was really nothing to play for, I will say. And he came in the dressing room with 3 games to go. Just remember, he said there's a £1 million difference between fourth and fifth. So although you might think the season's over, it's not for our club. We need to finish fourth. Makes a big difference, mate.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah, but 100 grand's not really much to
the
write home
players,
about, is
they
it?
couldn't give a
you got to
rat's.
start somewhere, Michelle.
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. So, and
But
I just think from
I wonder where that money
integrity point of
goes.
view.
Do the players get
we'd
it?
always get the players. We'd always get 20% of it. The players, the rest goes to the club to go to the juniors, to go to the training ground, to pay your staff. You would always say, "I'll give you 20% of anything that we earn."
Yep.
Boz, so that makes a difference.
I believe, and I could be wrong, so please shoot me down if you know the answer and I am wrong, but I do believe that it's about $500,000 that you win if you win the comp. Bozza, my thing is that give $500,000 to the reverse it. Give $500,000 to the minor premiers for what they've achieved over the course of the year, and give $100,000 to the winners. The winners are going to scoop up a heap in merchandise and memberships and that anyway, season tickets.
Yeah, that's true. But I just think there should be more. I mean, I actually had this conversation, would you believe, with Craig Bellamy about 6 or 7 years ago at Cooper Cromp's and Tara Russian's wedding. And I just think that there should be more kudos play. When you come back from pre-season, Joel, you know yourself, when you're training, right, okay, you might be thinking about grand final eventually, but you're trained to be the best team over the full season, first and foremost.
Yep.
Well, over whatever it is, 8 months, so Melbourne Storm must take this. They've been the best team in all types of weather, on all types of pitches, and all types of conditions. Plus with the Origin when you don't have a break, which is ridiculous. That's another story altogether. That should be, you've won, that could be like the FA Cup in England. When they say you won the double, the main thing is the Premier League, but the second part is the FA Cup. That should be a major trophy. That should be celebrated. I used to get mad when I used to say to Nathan Hindmarsh at Fox, "Oh, you haven't won anything." They won the minor premiership that year. Yeah, so, because, we know with knockout competitions, which is what it is when it goes to the top 8, anything can happen on the day. You shouldn't take away from what you've done the whole season.
It's a valid point. I mean, how often would you have a conversation at the pub with someone saying, "Oh, who won the minor premiership in?" People wouldn't remember.
No,
it's a
non-event. We just don't. Boz, and the reason we got into this conversation because I was talking about a possible change to the path, I suppose, for the championship, which in our case is the National Rugby League. But there's been big changes in the UEFA Champions League.
There has, and this has been coming a long time. And I wouldn't say big changes, but there's been enough. Look, UEFA is the biggest confederation in the world. It's got 55 members, with the proliferation of all the states of the former Soviet Union, the former Yugoslavia. So there's 55 members in Europe. So just like the World Cup's advanced now to 48 teams, UEFA have been looking for quite some time, obviously with the pressure hanging over the head of some of the super clubs saying we're going to have a breakaway league, of extending the competition. And to make it a little bit more, you could say, jeopardous for some of the bigger sides, because of the seeding competitions before, for the last 20 years or so, we've had 8 groups of 4, and only the top 2 in each group qualify. So there's a lot of teams that just sort of think, it's going to be very difficult for us to qualify. That's why they used to make a selection of third-place teams, then drop to the Europa League. Well, no more. They've come up with is something that they've nicknamed the Swiss system, and this will be the same for the Champions League and for the Europa League. The Conference League, the third-tier competition, is just a little bit different. But let's focus on the Champions League and Europa League. So now there's 36 teams. There's no more groups, all right? There's 4 pots of 9. So 9 fours, 36, right?
Yeah.
And those pots are based upon your seeding. So, the pot 1 is for the top seeds, then pot 2, pot 3, pot 4. you play two different teams from each one of the pots, including your own.
Okay.
Okay, home. So you got 4 games home, 4 games away. There is going to be a league table, Joel, of 36 teams. So 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 for a loss. The top 8 will go straight into the round of 16. Then teams 9 to 24 will play off against each other over a 2-legged affair in what's called the knockout round.
Oh, this is the wild card.
Well, exactly. So then teams 25 to 36 are out. There's no more going back to the Europa League. And that's the same with the Europa League. Okay, exactly the same. The only difference with the Conference League is they only play 6 games. Okay, so they're going to have 6 pots of 6. They're going to play one team from each pot. That's all. And there's no going down. And also, whereas in the past you couldn't meet a team from your own country until the quarterfinal stage, you can meet them immediately now. The only other thing to take into consideration is that teams that finish 9 to 16, I think it is, they will be seeded. And the ones from 16 to 24, they won't be for that knockout tie before the quarterfinals. So it was brilliant. It was just that Cristiano Ronaldo was there for the draw. Gianluigi Buffon, the Italian goalkeeper against the Socceroos in 2006, he was there as well. It was just that you know before you had the draw, you drew one team and then you left it to the software. So the software would go, okay, the team drawn out now is Aston Villa from pot 3, and then Cristiano Ronaldo would press the button, and then all of a sudden it would come up. So gone are the days where I used to stay and tweet out every group, so I would have been there I would still be there right now.
Yeah. Michelle, I really like this, and this is actually something that we could plagiarise in the National Rugby League, where you could have
pots.
You could have 4 pots based on where you finished the year prior, and you have because there's no real equality in the draw at the moment. People are saying that Melbourne haven't played the hardest draw of all time, and nor have the Cronulla Sharks.
Our draw is a disaster.
Yeah, but under what Bozza is saying that they're doing in the Champions League, that would be complete. You can't control what happens the following year, but based on the last year's ladder, I reckon it's great, Boz.
No, 100%. And the pots are obviously based on the last year's performance and their overall coefficient, which in our speak, in UEFA, it means that you pass record and so forth. But what it also does do is that the early games, so some of the early games, maybe you've got a group of 4 where you'll have one top team, a next the next top team, then the third ranked team, the fourth ranked team. Well, now you can say Real Madrid, for example, in their draw, they're going to play Liverpool. In the league stage, they're going to play AC Milan. That's huge games.
Yeah.
Those are games you used to seeing, in the knockout stages. And teams like, say, Celtic, Celtic haven't qualified for nearly 10 years for the knockout stage, right? But now they'll be playing, the likes of those teams as well, pretty much almost immediately. And it gives the teams, say some of the less fancier teams. Let's take, for example, let's take Celtic. So they're going to play Borussia Dortmund. They're going to play, who are the finals, Aston Villa. They're also going to play Leipzig, Club Brugge, Atalanta, Young Boys of Switzerland, who Fletch loves.
Yeah, Wildcard Stadium.
And he does. He loves them. And Dinamo Zagreb. Now, a lot of people who don't know football won't know those teams, but what I'm saying to you is you've got to think this of your Celtic. We should be able to get in the top 24, which will mean we're into the knockout stages.
Yeah,
I like that. The only thing I'm a little bit concerned about, but I can understand that too, because the amount of games that are being played by the top teams. Say if you're guaranteed to be in the top 8, maybe the last 2 games you might rest a few players like we saw with Storm, but that, you've earned the right to do that.
Yep.
And when you're talking about resting a few players and playing a few of the players on the bench of the top teams, that's not, you're just looking at top players that are just sort of a split second off the players that are starting before them anyway. But I like the fact, like I said, that some of these teams that, some people would never have heard of, they're going to think we've got a real chance. We've just got to get in the top 24 out of 36 teams.
I love it, Boz. Just before you go, mate, Premier League, you're at the lunch today, the Premier League lunch. What'd you
Premier
learn
League
from there?
lunch,
What can you tell us?
Laurie's lunch. You've got to come, both of you, all of you have got to come to it. It's a really, really good show. A chap called Laurie Masuri. So he told me today, 17 years ago today we started this. There were 17 people. Well, at Club York today at Clarence Street in Sydney CBD, there must have been over 400.
Wow.
And they're looking, and apparently he had to turn back just as many. So he normally does a skit from a famous film, like maybe A Few Good Men, the court scene with Jack Nicholson, but he has football speed coming out.
Yep.
He has special guests there, people being interviewed and that. So if you guys come, it'd be great to have you up on stage and here. And the only prerequisite is that you wear a shirt of the team that you support. So it was really good. We have it twice a year, once usually at the start of the season. It would have been before the start of the season had Laurie not being overseas. And then one usually around March, April as well. So it's amazing how it's grown. It's just amazing the interest that the Premier League garners here in Australia. And thank you to Club York as well there on Clarence Street. They were absolutely fantastic.
Hey, Boz, just before you go, for those who aren't absolutely rusted onto the round ball game, what's the biggest story at the moment relating to the Premier League?
The biggest story right now relating to the Premier League, basically, you have to say, if you're talking about the football and the football alone, who's going to stop Manchester City?
Yep.
Now, that goes into another thing which I don't like talking about. We spoke about it today, but I don't like talking about stuff off the pitch. Obviously, they're still under the cloud of that 115 charges, which have not been proven yet. So I want people to keep that in their mind. They've also been cleared of that by the Court of Arbitration of Sport after being found guilty by UEFA. So people are innocent until proven otherwise. But sadly, and we're having this conversation today, it actually came up about Melbourne Storm, Joel, all those years ago.
Yeah.
And my point was, if you're Parramatta, say, for example, my team, do you say to people in 10 years' time, well, we won that grand? You don't, do you?
No.
I don't like retrospective, no matter what, taking titles off people. I can understand if you do a point reduction, like, if you say, right, this season you're 40 points behind because, of course, we've got relegation, yeah? But taking titles off people, when you know they've won it fair and square, I think that's, for me, that's drawing a long bow.
Yeah, no, like that. And Boz, we love having you on.
Just
Michelle?
before we let you go, because it's usually me copying some sticks. So we've got a text here. It says, Bozza catching up with Craig Bellamy. Nice bruising, Bozza. That's from the Port Adelaide Dragon. When you're talking about Tara's wedding, love it. It's usually me copying it, so I just had to hand it out a bit.
Well, it was at the same table. What else do you want me to talk about?
Exactly, Boz.
I'll
That's
bruise
exactly
about
right.
it too.
Boz, you're an absolute gem, mate. We appreciate you once again joining myself and Michelle. We'll have a great weekend, young man. Happy Father's Day, Boz.
And remember as well, tonight, the Europa League draws at 9 o'clock live on Stan, and the Conference League draws at 10:30 p.m. tonight. It's Australian. This is the East Coast time as well. So Manchester United and Ange Postecoglou's, the Australian Tottenhams, are in that Europa League draw. So make sure you watch. Because like I said, for me, it's great because they just take one ball out, you see who the team is, the special guest presses the button, and all of a sudden it just goes boom, 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 boom. There's your 8 opponents. 4 home, 4 away.
Love it. Absolutely love it. You can watch every
done.
match of the UEFA Champions League, UEFA Europa League, and UEFA Europa Conference League live and exclusive on Stan Sport